Just got this 365 GTC4 off the truck. It's from a customer of mine, sent it to me, and he said it wasn't running well, and he wanted me to take a look at it. So when we first got it off the truck, we had some just wouldn't start. I mean, just would not catch, and I felt there was something going on with the fuel. I had taken the air cleaner covers off, and just didn't smell fuel. I mean, I was running the fuel pump, I was pumping it, and it just didn't feel like the car had any fuel going to it, and it just wouldn't start. It almost catches, and then it just wouldn't. And I kept pumping and pumping, and if I pumped that much and there was fuel, you would have smelled it. Would have been fouled up, but it wasn't running. So put some starter fluid down each of the throats and fired right up, and then it actually idled okay. So I brought it inside, and this is what I found. Once I got it started, it'll idle okay, but the second I give it gas, it'll do it a little bit. But if I really give it, if I put my foot to the floor, like what I'm doing is I'm just, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm putting my foot to the floor on the accelerator, and it just falls flat on its face. I could do it easily. So what that tells me is that some of the accelerator pumps are not working. So when I go to open the throttle, it goes lean and falls flat on its face. So you know, with 6 carburetors, it could take just a few of them. Could be a few of them that are clogged, so the accelerator pumps are clogged. So that's the first thing I'm going to check. Other than that, you know, let's see where we go. It's a nice car. I mean, it's got interesting. It's got a painted front bumper, black usually. Without the bumper, it's like that dull rubber, but it looks like somebody's painted it and put a little subtle red stripe down the side. Black interior, red carpeting. So you know, interesting accents. But this is going to be the project for the next few days. I'll take a look at it and find some time to take a look at it and try to get it running a little bit better. So taking a look at the engine, it's pretty clean. I mean, it's all really nicely detailed, pretty clean, nice neat car. So I think the problem with this car is that it just is having issues with the carburetor because it's just been sitting. I can try to clean some of it, but I suspect that we're going to have other issues and just little things. I took a couple of these little jets out and took a look, and they were a lot of residue in there. So I don't know if it's going to be really successful in just cleaning up the accelerator pumps. So the struggle with a 365 GTC4 is it's going to be a little involved, because I have to take each one of these velocity stacks out, have to unbolt them before I can actually take the air cleaner out. The air filter, or the air filter assembly, comes out first, and then I can take each of these carburetors, which also requires taking the fuel rail out. I can disconnect the linkages and leave those linkages in place, but choke cable has to come out, and each one of these have to come out. So it's going to be a little bit of a job, but that's about the only way to do it. And then once I get the carburetors out, each one of them has to get disassembled and cleaned. So it's a pretty involved process, but has to be done. And I'm hoping that once I get it all out, it should run much better. And then if you keep running it and driving it on a regular basis, it won't do that again. So here we go. So I don't know if you can hear me over the rain falling on the building, but I took the 2 carburetors off, and I just wanted to take a quick peek. Even though I know exactly what happened, I'll show you what's going on. So I just took, you know, the cap off of here, took the couple screws just so I can get a peek at the floats. So as you can see, inside the carburetor there should be plenty of fuel. So if I put my light here and you look down the carburetor, you should be able to see a squirt of fuel in there as I open the throttle. but nothing. So definitely the accelerator pedal, or the accelerator pumps, which is in this circuit here, is clogged. And also there's a little bit of trash in the bottom of the floats, which is normal. But I'm gonna, oh yeah, you could definitely see something growing down there. It looks like, oh yeah, I mean, I don't know if you could see it down there. There's just something growing down there, which is probably the fuel, so let me just take a look here. This is the, yeah, you see that's kind of stuck there too. So definitely got some issues there. Starting to squirt a little bit. One side is squirting, but the other side there is pretty stuck. So yeah, I think the best way to do this with the stuff that I see growing down there is just to take the carburetors apart, clean them all off, put it back together. Should be much better once I do that. So that's the next step. I started by taking the top part of the carburetor off, which covers the floats. But the one trick on these carburetors you got to be really careful on DCOEs is the accelerator pumps. They have this tiny little ball that's really easy to lose, so just be careful as you're dumping it out. It's right there. The rest of the carburetor just unscrews and you just get all the needles, emulsion tubes, those things out. I put them in a glass jar that I put in the ultrasonic cleaner. The bottom plate comes out and has a little rubber gasket. This one was in really good shape, so I think it was recently rebuilt. So I think I won't have to buy any gaskets for this carburetor. The next step is to pull the choke assembly out, and those were pretty stuck. These pistons must have gotten some kind of residue on there, and it wasn't really coming out easily. I had to work it a little bit before I could finally get that one piston out. Next step was to pull the needle out of the float and get that in the tank as well. Knocking the pin out of the float is a little tricky. It takes a certain amount of force, but you have to be careful not to break the stand that the pin is attached to. My ultrasonic cleaner is only about a gallon or so in capacity, so the DCOE carburetor is a pretty big carb, so it pretty much takes up all the space along with the little parts on the side. But if you look closely, you can see the dirt being knocked off and floating off on the carburetor body, showing that this ultrasonic cleaner is really doing its job. I fast forwarded through the disassembly of the assembly of this carburetor, but I do have a video link to the complete process for those that really want to see a full step-by-step process. Setting the bowls on a Weber, depending on what type you're using, can change from car to car. Obviously, each one has a different way of measuring it. So what on the manual, the C4 uses the DCOE obviously, and it shows you the measurements. So as you can see, you can measure it either from the bottom of the float to or you can measure the distance, which is 5 millimeters plus or minus 0.2, or it's 51 millimeters from the bottom of the float to the top of the base plate, or the top of the plate. So, and the way to adjust it is that you have to bend. If you look in here, there's a little needle that rides up and down, and that point, not the spring part, because you'll see the needle close even more, is like a little spring. You don't want it to be on there, so you kind of have to measure it sideways. If you try to measure it this way, a lot of times the weight of the float will close that spring. So kind of have to measure it sideways, and then I don't have enough hands to show you, but if I take a caliper and measure the distance from that plate to the bottom of the float, and I have the 51 millimeters, that's the height. And in order to change the height, you basically just have to bend that tab so that it gets to where you need to go. So that's kind of roughly how to do, you know, a float adjustment, and before you put everything back together. So after assembling the carburetor and getting everything back together, I check the accelerator pumps just to make sure that everything's working. The little holes inside of these accelerator pumps really easily get clogged. So the best way to check is to put some fuel in the bowl, and then operate, let it prime, and you can see it. It's squirting. So that makes sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to. So because once you put everything back together again, you know, it'll be on the car and you gotta check it again. So might as well check it when it's out. And then what I'll do is I'll just dump all the fuel out, clean everything out, pump the rest of it out, move my expensive caliper out of the way, and just make sure that the bowls are empty. Pump them all out. So I don't know how long it'll be before I put the carburetor back in. So I'm just going to dump all that fuel out so it's empty, and put everything back together. I've checked the float levels on this, and this is ready to go back in, so I can drop that into place, put the carburetor together. I got the carburetors all cleaned up and reinstalled, and it is all back together. The next step I have to do is put the air filter or the air box back on. That's the struggle. So let me show you what happened. So the second air filter, when I pulled it out, it was in rough shape. It looks like it was kind of squeezed and everything in place, and it's got all the little, like I've said before, once these little wires expose, these are like little razor blades, and when you're trying to get your hand inside there to install it, because like I said, it goes inside first. I have to put this in the air box first so that I can get the horns back in. So you kind of have to tuck it all in there with the little tabs in place, and once this is in position like that, you have to carefully get your hands in here and put the little velocity stacks in, which are over here. So, you know, there's one or two of them here that have a special notch in them, but they go up inside there. But you kind of have to reach around to start the nuts and get it all in there one at a time, as you can see. And when those things start showing up, your hands are going to get cut to hell. So need to buy a new air filter. Guess how much a new air filter costs? About 250 bucks. So yikes. But you know, talk about Ferrari tax. You have no choice, because I'm not cutting my fingers up on these things. So new air filters, and you know, and unfortunately even this one came a little pre-bent. It looks like it was just, you know, in shipping it's just gotten a little bent, but hopefully it's a little bit safer than that messed up one. So that's my struggle for today. All right, this is the moment of truth. Before I put the lids on, I'm just going to fire it up and show you how well it runs now with the accelerator pumps fixed. So this car is ice cold this morning. Before I finish up, I'm going to just fire it up for you. Turn on the key, let the fuel pump fill a little bit. give it a couple puffs of gas. Ice cold, but way more responsive. Got a little bit of a fuel leak there. Let me just go tighten that up just a little bit. All right, so I got that fuel leak fixed. I'll blow that off a little bit. But if you hear snapping noises, that's the alternator. That little plastic belt makes noise until it warms up. But let me just show you how responsive this is.